Okay, joining us via Skype from Davis, California is Hannah Safford. She is the Environmental Policy Specialist, who I mentioned a little bit earlier. Nice to have you with us, Hannah. 70% of the world is covered in water, I believe. Desalination, I know this technology which we're talking about here is new and going into mass production will be a whole bigger step, but doesn't it all seem to make sense? You know, we're here in the desert, we have to desalinate all our water because there's just not enough rainfall. It seems to make sense.
Yeah, that's right. We really need to talk about matching water streams to water end uses. You know, there's a lot of different types of water out there in the world. We can think about saline water. We can think about wastewater. We can think about gray water that you use for washing, as well as fresh water. And all of those different water resource streams can be used for different purposes. And right now we do a lot of wasting potable water on non-potable applications like agriculture. And we take a lot of non-potable water and treat it as waste, period. And we don't think about ways that we can extract the value from that water. So I think we need to do a better job of ensuring that wastewater isn't wasted, and the kinds of technological innovation that we're seeing, like the graphene treatment, are examples of that.
So what can be done? You mentioned two which sort of piqued my interest there, grey water, which I think you said was washing water, and wastewater as well. What can be, I guess we're saying, recycled from that and reused?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So it's interesting to think about the potentials for recycling wastewater, both into potable water and then also thinking about other types of value that you can extract from wastewater. Wastewater, again, which we characterize as something that's just waste, actually has a lot of useful value. So it contains a lot of biosolids and organic matter that if you do an efficient job of collecting those biosolids, you can combust them and generate clean energy at the same time as you're generating clean water. So thinking about the concept of actually getting to energy neutral or net energy positive wastewater treatment. There's also the potential to do direct water reuse. So rather than taking wastewater and discharging it to our oceans, we can think about closing that water cycle, taking wastewater, transforming it into clean drinking water that we can use for all sorts of purposes.
Do you think there's enough awareness about all of this, Hannah? I mentioned at the start of our segment that the UN is saying 25% of the world's population won't have access to clean water in only 30 years. That's not long to go.
It's true. You know, I think that it's really easy. Once you don't have access to water, you think about how important it becomes. And I'm sure that that's something that residents of Cape Town and other recently water-stressed or water-scarce regions are thinking about. In California, we see that quite a bit because we've got parts of the state where water is very prevalent and parts of the state where water is very scarce. And in the water-scarce regions, it's very much front of mind. But in the water-rich regions, we don't think about where our water comes from, how much water we have, and how quickly we're using up consumable sources of water like groundwater. So education and outreach is certainly a huge part of trying to solve the water crisis.
Just a quick final question for you, Hannah. It's come from one of our viewers, Jonathan, who's asked basically, is water possibly the next oil? You know, the thing, that precious commodity which people are desperate for and people might even fight over.
You know, I like to think about water as not necessarily the next oil, but the next energy, because there's a lot of different types of water, just as there's a lot of different types of energy. Oil is one of them. Consumable sources of water like groundwater are also one of them. But in the same way that we're seeing the proliferation of energy innovation across the globe and a proliferation of renewable alternative sources of energy, we can think about much more sustainable ways to reuse our water.
Hannah Safford, great talking to you. I know it's early there on the West Coast on Sunday morning, so we do appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.